Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred on podcast, and we have a huge Premier League game at home to Brentford on Thursday night. I'm recording this on Wednesday, but it's the Thursday night, and it's huge not just because we didn't win our last Premier League game, and of course we got knocked out of the FA Cup, but also just to regain momentum and that feeling now that the end of January is here, and I've been discussing the end of January for about a month and a half, 2 months now, as the time when, with our players coming back from injury, and we can see that happening with Maddison's return, Van de Ven now looking like he's never been away, but also players finally coming back from AFCON, and hopefully soon the Asian Cup too. We saw last night that Pape Matar Sarr's Senegal were knocked out of the African Cup of Nations on penalties to the Ivory Coast, and as much as I never want Pape Matar Sarr to be unhappy, I'm delighted that he hopefully today will be flying back. If I'm Daniel Levy, I would have got that Tottenham private plane straight out to the Ivory Coast, pick up Pape Matar Sarr, lay him on all the food, get him sleeping in a lovely first-class seat, and just wrap him in cotton wool and say to him, or get Big Ange to say to him, why don't you come and sit on the bench tomorrow night at home to Brentford? That's what I'd be doing because we've missed him. We're also missing Yves Bissouma. I think he plays tonight for Mali. You know, like again, I don't want him to be unhappy, but if they can get knocked out, get him on the plane. Get the plane straight back out there. That's what I'm saying. And then I know that Sonny has a difficult game in the Asian Cup against Saudi Arabia for South Korea. But that's what I'm talking about. The end of January, beginning of February, getting our entire squad fit and healthy and back together for a real push. And the next 5 Premier League games, 4 of them are at home. The away game is at the weekend against Everton, who are not on a good run. They've got a difficult game away tonight themselves, but they've not been on a good run, and they lost in the FA Cup just at the weekend to Luton, I think, at home. I think they're on a bad run, actually. Since they played us, they were on an amazing run before they played us, and then we snuck a 2-1 victory against them, which arguably we shouldn't have done, and since then they've been on a bit of a downward spiral, and they've been charged again for more profit and sustainability rule breaking, potentially. Allegedly. So maybe potentially it's a good time to play Everton at the weekend, but before then, let's not run before we can walk. We have Brentford tomorrow night, and I will go in later in this episode into why potentially it might be a good time to play Brentford too, despite the fact that they have their talisman, Ivan Toney, back. Anyway, before I get into the nuts and bolts of this game, guys, thank you so much once again for all your support. I just want to remind you, there is a membership option. You can either become a Patreon for £1 a month or a YouTube member. It's called the Spurred on Pro membership. Again, just £1 a month. And what that helps me do is continue making this daily content for you. And I'm getting so much support and so many lovely comments from you. I really appreciate it. But there will also be membership perks. When I've got enough of you together, there will be membership perks. Already you will get the videos earlier than everybody else if you become a member. But also, there will be live shows with me just for members and Q&A. So please do look in the description box wherever you are watching this or listening to this, and you can find out how to become a member. Thank you once again for your support. But back to the Brentford game. Brentford currently 14th in the league overall, but their away form, and of course this game is at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, their away form, they are 17th. So their form overall is 1-6, drawn 4, lost 10, but their away form only, they've only won 2 games, drawn 1, and lost 6. So their form away from home, not good this season. In terms of their away results, the last 6 results, they lost 3-1 at Palace, they lost 1-0 at Sheffield United, they lost 2-1 at Brighton. No shame in that. Brighton, excellent team, especially at home. They lost 3-0 at Liverpool. They were steamrollered there. They did beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge 2-0, and they lost away at Manchester United. So the outlier there is really that Chelsea game. That was kind of during the peak times when Chelsea were playing pretty well, but really finding ways to lose games. They hit the stanchion of the bar and crossbar that game from Madueke. They made a lot of chances, but couldn't really test the goalkeeper, the Brentford keeper. And Brentford really broke away, got a couple of goals. One from a cross to the back stick and a header. And then the second goal, I don't know if you remember, but it was when Sanchez, the Chelsea keeper, was up for a corner in the very last seconds of the game. And Brentford broke away and scored a second. One thing I will say about those away results that I just read out for Brentford, Ivan Toney, he was not available for any of those games, and he has returned, and in the one game he's played in the league since his return, they did get a victory, a home win. So, how important is Ivan Toney to them? Well, obviously, he is a top striker, very, very impressive ever since he's been in the Premier League. He's just served his suspension for gambling issues, betting on his own team's games, etc., etc., and he is a force of nature. However, I think almost Bryan Mbeumo is just as important for them, and he is injured. When Mbeumo and Toney play together, they run those channels incredibly well, and they'll be missing him, I think, for sure. They've also got some other injuries I'll go into later, but particularly Mbeumo, I think they'll miss, and also Rico Henry, who caused us havoc when we played away at Brentford on the opening game of the season. If you remember, it was Big Ange's first game in charge. We got the opening goal with Christian Romero nodding in a header from a brilliant flat James Maddison free kick from the left, whipping in towards the far post. And then they equalised from a penalty. Son gave away a penalty, kind of taking the legs from under one of their players in the box. It was very harsh. It wasn't given in real time, and then they went back to VAR and overturned it, which I was surprised about because, sure, he did make contact with him, but very much the player made the most of it and kind of didn't allow himself to stand on his standing leg after he'd been touched. It was a bit of a dive. And then Royale's second goal was the equaliser. Emerson Royale on the edge of the box. James Maddison had beaten a player and felt a touch and gone down for a free kick. And while everyone expected the ref to blow up, it just bounced up nicely for Emerson Royale, who with his laces volleyed it in to the bottom left-hand corner. For me, 2-2 on the opening day. I was happy with that. Obviously, we are very much a work in progress at that stage. Big Ange Postecoglou had only just joined the club, and I thought it was a very, very good result. As I said earlier, one of the big things with Brentford are they're not afraid to play a couple of men up front sometimes, but whoever they play in the forward line, they run the channels incredibly well. And therefore, Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero tomorrow night will have to do a lot of work kind of reading the game and seeing when those kind of mid-range balls are played into the channels and cover that space, because obviously Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro will be up the pitch playing high a lot of the time, and I think Brentford will try and make the most of that. So Van der Ven, who has been playing incredibly well since he came back and has the pace to cover those spaces, that's why he's so key to this Tottenham side, and then Christian Romero with his just incredible reading of the game will have to be very sharp to those opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, Rico Henry, huge loss to them. I think it's Rico Henry, sorry. My best friend's called Rico, so anyone spelt like that I call Rico. But Rico Henry, an incredible left back, kind of goes under the radar, really underestimated as a fullback. He had an injury earlier this season that I think has put him out for the rest of the season, or certainly most of it. And that's why they got Sergio Reguilon on loan from us this January. But that, of course, means he is cup-tied. So really good news for us. They'll be kind of having to play a round peg in a square hole at left back. And certainly, as I mentioned earlier, in that first game on the first day of the season, they caused us all sorts of trouble from that left back position. For me, in terms of Spurs, James Maddison is key. He has to start tomorrow night. We need his creativity, and him starting, and I'm hoping getting at least 65, 70 minutes, will enable Brennan Johnson to get a rest. He looks jaded and fatigued. People are getting on his back wrongly, if you ask me. He's a raw talent. He deserves support. Don't expect the finished article just because we had to pay a lot of money to get him. We had to pay a lot of money to get him because of the English club to English club tax and the homegrown player tax. So we had to get to like 40 million plus add-ons. He looks jaded though. He's played many more minutes than he would have expected to at this stage, and then Spurs would have expected him to. So bring him out, put Deki Kulusevski back on the right, and bring Maddison into the middle and let him take charge of the game. That's what I can see happening. I would also bring in Ollie Skip for Pierre Højbjerg. I would move Rodrigo Bentancur into the 6, put Skip in that Sarr role and allow him to kind of stretch the play with his boundless energy. That's what he did really well in the games where he has started in that 8 position, and I would like to see that again tomorrow night. I see why Ange brought Pierre in against Man City, I do, but for this one I'd bring Skip in. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with me, or would you play Pierre over Skip? Brentford, of course, did win this fixture last season. It was when Ryan Mason had just come in to take over from Stellini, who had taken over from Conte. And what I enjoyed about that game, I remember it, is that it was the first example of Ryan Mason trying to get us playing proper football again. And actually, we played pretty well, but Brentford picked us off and they beat us. But apart from that, Spurs have only lost 1 of the last 9 meetings against Brentford. I would have Pape Matar Sarr on the bench, as I said at the start of this game. Get him in the private jet. get him wrapped in cotton wool, give him a couple of ice baths and say, sit on the bench, and if we need you, Pap, we'll get you on the pitch. He scored an absolutely brilliant penalty in the shootout last night, actually. Obviously, I was nervous. Whenever I see a Spurs player having to take a penalty for their country, I'm always nervous, but he absolutely roofed it. What a player he's going to become, and I'm pleased to have him back. As I mentioned, Brentford not only missing Mbeumo and Rico Henry, but also 5 other players. They've got a number of players out at AFCON, so it could be a good time to play Brentford. I know Toney's back, but missing a big chunk of their squad, and that's something we've obviously had to suffer with over the past month or two. It's good to be playing a team who are also suffering with that. So here is my team for tomorrow night that I would play. Vicario in goal, Pedro Porro on the right, Destiny Udogie left back, Van de Ven and Romero. Then, like I said, Bentancur in the 6, Ollie Skip and James Maddison in the 2-8s, Deki Kulusevski on the right, Richarlison down the middle. Let's hope he can get his goal-scoring form up again, having not scored in the past couple of games. And, of course, on the left, Timo Werner. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see Werner get an assist or a goal tomorrow night. My prediction for the game, 3-1 Tottenham Hotspur. And like I said, with these 5 games coming up, where the highest ranked team we're playing is Brighton in 7th, and 4 of those 5 games being at home, it's a real opportunity for Spurs to push on with now nothing distracting us. No cup games, nothing. Can we win these 5 games? And then that will be 15 points, and we will be right up there once again. Maybe not where Liverpool are, because they've got, I think, 8 points on us, but we will be back in that top 4 and really threatening those top 2 or 3 positions if we can get on a little run now. Let's see what happens. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for the support. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do also go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Press that subscribe or follow button. It's so helpful for me. And vice versa. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, please do come to youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_. Press subscribe, drop me a like. And once again, most importantly, tomorrow night, come on you Spurs.